good morning. Good morning, good morning. Just like Dan Aykroyd and the late John Belushi and the Blues Brothers, I am on a mission from God. Their mission was to save the orphanage for the children. My mission is to save the children for the state of Washington. And let me be perfectly clear about my terms. First, God, or God, however you want to say it, is perfect, omnipotent, all-knowing entity or force. Mission and assignment that one needs to carry out. So this mission from God is early learning. But hey, there you are. You guys already think that way because you're sitting here at this early learning seminar. So we have, well, that's good. I like that, yeah. So, but we have got to convince everybody. So to do that, let's use our brains. And I mean use our brains. So everybody do this. This is your brain. Not on drugs, but your brain. And your arm is your spinal cord. Your wrist, where it bends, is your brain stem. Right around there is your cerebellum, which is your balance. Keeps you from falling over most of the time. The top of your hand are your occipital and temporal lobes. Your middle finger is the corpus callosum, which divides the hemisphere in half. And Jill Sells, don't correct me, I saw you come in, Dr. Sells. So you have on top of your hand where your rings are, for example, is the frontal lobe, and your fingertips are the prefrontal lobes. And we're going to use the brain, because all parts of the brain scream to us that the mission is early learning. We are logical adults, so let's start with the left hemisphere. Verbal, problem solving, thinking, that kind of thing. And gather some things that will appeal to that part of our brain. Let's look at the first slide. You guys have all seen this a million times, but it bears looking at again. So one reason why this is a mission from God is that so much happened so early. We just didn't know. And now we do, thanks to Harvard Center for the Young Developing Child. You can see that so many things, the sensory pathways, how kids figure out their world, happens even prenatally, but certainly during the first 6 months. The first year of life, as the child's needs are being met, because infants are born incredibly helpless, and they need adults to take care of them. There's that interaction, and somebody's saying things. We know from our friends at iLabs that kids are global citizens. They could learn any language at all. But as they hear words spoken in mother's tongue, they stay. If they don't hear those sounds, they go out of their repertoire, and they can never say them physiologically. But language happens so very early, and then followed by, not too far away, again, at young years, by higher cognitive processes. Piaget would tell us that the baby, when they're playing around, is figuring out the world cognitively. They shake in the crib, and the mobile moves, and they laugh, because they did that. Cause effect. They have a bottle, and they drive you crazy, throwing it off the high chair over and over again, because they're figuring out gravity. When you throw things, they go that way. You give a young child a balloon, and it goes up, and they cry, because the rule got broken. What's that about? So we know that if you want to make a difference, says our left hemisphere, whoa, you got to start real early. So our left hemisphere says, good, got that, thank you very much. Hold up your brain again. Here's your brain. Stay with the left hemisphere, because we are such logical adults. Other parts of the left hemisphere that argue for this being the mission is the longitudinal research. You all know it, we all quote it. Ypsilanti studies, the Abecedarian studies, recent article, I guess it was in the Times about the Chicago study, shows that if you have quality, I still say quality early learning, you have children enter kindergarten ready, they do better in reading and writing, they graduate, they take more math and science classes, they score higher on IQ tests, they go to college, they don't go to jail, they aren't on welfare, and they have family wage jobs. All because of early learning. So when people say to you, how about that fade-out effect? Say, excuse me? Look at that longitudinal research. The fade-out effect people talk about depends on what you measure. If you measure some little thing at one point in time, later in life, the child knows all kinds of other things, maybe not that little thing, like fluency. I know from being superintendent, if you want to get rid of fade out, you do something to prevent it. You don't just look around. When we were in Bremerton, we had to advance our curriculum in third grade by a third of a year faster because kids were coming in that much more ready. If we hadn't done that, we would have fade out. We also now know from Jack Shonkoff, Center for the Developing Child, that during the same period of time, the same infancy period of time, your adult health is determined. My gosh, that too, huh? But they find that your reactivity to stimuli, your cardiovascular functioning is shaped back then. And so honest to goodness, how you're going to be healthy as an adult or not happens so very, very young. So our left hemisphere says, got that, logical, get it. Brain again. Let's move over to the right side. Right side of the brain is also problem solving, but much more visual spatial, much more creative, folks would say. And we have the whole area of economics. Let me quote you some things. We have some good friends in high places in economics. We all have heard about the longitudinal studies. You get, for $1, you get $8 return, or is it $16? We can keep changing that. I think that the truth of the matter is the longer you follow the children, the higher the rate of return. If you follow them right out of high school, it's $8. Into adult life, it becomes $16. There is a guy named Robert Lynch who thinks that early learning is the only public investment that literally pays for itself. You know, other public investments you do because they're a safety net. You have to support children and needy families. But this one, in early learning, will pay for itself in 6 years. That's a good deal, says your right hemisphere. I like that. You all know about James Heckman's work. James Heckman is a Nobel Prize-winning economist from the University of Chicago. Thank you. And he says things like this: quality early childhood education can close the income gap, reduce health disparities, and save taxpayers in lower health and societal costs. It saves money and it saves lives. Early learning is a moral imperative with an economic payoff. I don't say that as an early learning mission person, but that's an economist saying this is a good investment. So your right hemisphere says, that computes, good, that's good. Back to the brain, come on, come with me. If you now go underneath where your fingers are squished up in your fist, you have things like the hippocampus and the amygdala, and you start talking about emotion. Look at your hand for a minute. Don't you think it's interesting that every higher level cortex function to be activated in the body has to go through these emotions? So everything is moderated by emotions. You know, kids don't care what you know until they know how much you care, kind of thing. Absolutely true. In terms of emotions, they're all learned way back in these early interactions. There is a beautiful synchronicity, a balance, a rhythm between baby and mom. They look at each other and away from each other at the very same times. It's a fact that infants cry in the very decibel frequency most irritating to that mother. It's true. They know your number, so to speak, and that's what they cry at. The thing that attracts infants very early on is movement and contrast. And the object that has the most movement and contrast is the mother's face. And so they look at the mother's face, and she says, oh, he loves me. You know, and this goes back and forth and becomes a very balanced, harmonious, lovely dance that they do, so to speak. If things go well, the child is supported, they're talked to, they're looked at, they're loved, and they're strong enough, confident enough to venture out in their world. You know, Erik Erikson would say they have things like trust, and they can take those next bigger steps because they've been trusted so far. If it doesn't go well for them, and they're exposed to adverse childhood experiences, which don't have to be traumas, but continual neglect, indifference, what happens is literally their brains do not develop. They are smaller sometimes in weight, the brain. Kids that are really abused can be smaller in stature, in size. And you were talking, Jerome, their executive functioning gets messed up. It's not a scientific term, but it happens. and they don't regulate. So either they pull back and don't interact, or they act out, and things go badly for them. I think the best illustration of interactions is this incredibly wonderful, horrible video I'm about to show next, again from Harvard.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm my good girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Great, thank you. Don't you want to just say, quit the experiment, just hug the child? So let's go back to our brain, still using our brain. Go down to where your wrist is. I think there's also some part of our brain way down by the cerebellum that's kind of primal, gut level, kinesthetic, physiological, sensory motor that says babies are important. You look at a child, the smell of a newborn baby, you hold them in your hand with their little head. There's something very precious about that at a primitive kind of level. You don't need cognition or words to even explain it. One of my best examples is when my 32-year-old son, Sam, was little, about 2. I'd pick him up at childcare. He'd come running over to me, put his arms around my neck, his feet under my armpits, grab my face and say, "Mommy, I love you." Yeah, I can still feel that. It still gives me chills. My grandson, Mateus, will grab me and look at me with these eyes full of wonder and say, "Nana, Nana, watch me, watch me." There is something in your brain that says, this is precious. This is good. It's like watching your grandson be born. There's no question or data, whether you're looking at cognitive emotions or just gut feel. This is the mission from God. And we need, as they say, back to my movie. Okay, hang on, back to my movie. As they say in the Blues Brothers, and as you know from the Blues Brothers movie, you may have the establishment after you. You may have extreme groups trying to stop you, or crazy people you once knew trying to kill you. But this is the mission from God. And as they say in the Blues Brothers, I need you, you, I need you, I need all of you, because this is the mission. They close, towards the end of the movie, they say, well, it's 130 miles to Chicago. We have a half pack of cigarettes and a full tank of gas. We don't need the cigarettes. Our destination is here, now, this day, this moment. And we got plenty of passion to fuel the journey. So I gotta go. I'm on a mission from God.